Caddis Maximus here, this time with a kind of a review, but it's more of an overview and comparison discussion of sledgehammers. These are just going to be sledgehammers. Obviously, I have a lot more hammers to go through, but these are just going to be mallets, technically, of 3 pounds or heavier on the head, otherwise known as sledgehammers. And that's the deal with the sledgehammers. It's a high-force hammer with most of the weight concentrated on the head, and they do have a very heavy head. Now, sledgehammers can obviously be used for driving things such as fence posts or etc., demolition, removing stuck items, all the types of uses that are for large and heavy hammers. I did a review of this Wilton and compared it a little bit to these Huskies, so let's go ahead and start with the larger ones here since they're pretty huge. Sledgehammers tend to come in standard weights from about 3 pounds for sledgehammers. There's obviously lighter hammers such as 2 pound, 2.5 pound drilling hammers and fullers, but we'll get to those in a different video. For here, we'll talk about the heavier hammers. They tend to go up to 20 pounds would be about the heaviest. There are some heavier ones made. However, they are just so beyond 20 pounds, they start becoming quite inefficient to use because you have to use so much strength just to really swing the hammer, and you can't swing it with quite enough speed and force to make weights heavier than 20 pounds really effective, just because it's hard to swing the hammer fast enough. 10 pounds tends to be really the heaviest of recommended sizes, because really beyond that, unless you're doing extreme heavy duty work, all you're going to do is end up doing is wear yourself out. We have a variety of handle types, of course, metal handles, traditional hardwood handles. Fiberglass handles are kind of picking up popularity because they are cheap. They are lighter weight, so it does make it a more effective hammer because very little weight's actually trapped up in the handle, and it reduces vibration. You don't have to worry about splinters or the handle rusting or corroding, anything like that. The one issue that I've seen with fiberglass is they tend to break after a while, after heavy duty usage, and they're very difficult to replace. One of the things I was going to point out on this Husky is even though it has a really wide handle, it's actually pretty narrow in the fitting that goes to the head, and you can see that evidence to the bottom. That's one thing you really want to look for, is a really good attachment. These Huskies for the price are okay, but they're really not the best, particularly in an overstrike situation where you end up hitting the handle here. That's most of where I've seen fiberglass handles break. Let's get this out of the way. We did just review this Wilton. This is a pretty heavy duty one with a steel core handle with a heavy rubberized overcoating. The handle on this is much more weighty than the rest of these sledgehammers, and you do notice that. You do feel the weight that's higher up. Even though this is very low vibration, this overall, the sledgehammer tends to be a little bit heavier for the amount of quote-unquote swing force than other types of sledgehammers. But what you're paying for here is what they advertise as unbreakable, of it being extremely tough under very heavy duty use, including overstrikes where you end up using a full force overhead swing and you end up hitting somewhere on the lower head or on the handle. The other thing that Wilton does is makes a very nice large fitting into the head to try to prevent it from coming loose. Also, 36-inch handles tend to be the standard, although they can be in any lengths. Standard sledgehammers such as this 8-pound Wilton or the 6-pounder will come anything from 18-inch, 24-inch, 36-inch handles. Just for the amount of per se amount of mass that you need versus the amount of swing speed or space that you have. This would be a more traditional Verona, American made. This is a pretty nice one, kind of along the lines of a Corona, and they've traditionally been a real nice standard. They have this nice rubber, heavy-duty rubber guard over the lower portion of the handle to help protect from overstrikes, and this is traditionally how it's done. And I've always appreciated this design because it does tend to work pretty well. And this would just be considered a 6-pound, and that would be the standard weight for a sledgehammer. If you get a sledgehammer, you tend to get a 6-pounder. That way you can swing it pretty fast and pretty hard, but it still has more than enough mass to really get the jobs done that you need. Moving on, this would be a short handle sledge. This is obviously a custom unit that was welded, just a solid steel bar to a big chunk of steel. This would be about a 8-pounder equivalent. And these are handy in situations where you do need a lot of mass, particularly if you're counteracting another piece of mass that is quite heavy. as well as situations where you just don't have quite as much room to strike with. And even though there is a bit of vibration through the metal handle, since it's so short, and you tend not to be swinging this with just as much force as you would with a longer handle, it's really not so bad. And the other reason you'd have a short handle sledge is because it has a short enough handle for you to be able to operate it with one hand, which is kind of a big deal in many situations. Obviously, this one, I bought this used and has been well used, but the nice thing about a hammer like this is really the use and the mushrooming on this proves that this is a pretty solid and crack resistant piece of steel. Moving down the line, what we have is a 4-pound driving sledgehammer, and I've been told that it's known as a driving hammer, and the reason is because the head has this interesting taper around each of the driving faces. The reason you would have this taper is it makes it have a little bit more clearance for when you're driving, say, really large spikes, large nails. There are wood nails that are made that are like 12 inches long. And then this is the type of hammer that you'd use with this. This also has a custom metal handle. I'd eventually replace it with wood. The issue I was finding was that the head had such a narrow hole in it that the kind of wood handles that I was trying would just end up breaking. So a friend helped me do a little custom job. And this would be considered an intermediate length with a 24-inch handle, which is just about right for a 4-pound head. Then we have a small sledge. This would be a 4-pound, they call these a double face hammer, but they're also a sledgehammer. And just a smaller version of a traditional wood handle, but it has the standard, more squared off, wide face head. And these are really nice. These are a real go-to hammer when you need a nice heavy-duty hammer. And then we have a couple of smaller Performance Tool fiberglass handle ones, which are also epoxied in, and thus making it difficult to replace the handle if it breaks. And that's always been a frustration. But the fiberglass rubberized handles, like on these, on those slightly more modern ones, do have lighter weight handles, so you're getting more effective force when you're driving. They're easier to grip with the heavy corrugations and the rubber overmolding. And they do indeed transmit low vibration. And then, of course, they come in different styles. Like this one is also a 4-pound sledge, but it has a wide peen or a straight peening surface, just when you need more concentrated force. So this was just a quick video talking about various sledgehammers and large hammers, and why you might want to have a few different ones. Really, the big deal is using as light a hammers that will really get the job done. A lot of people say, oh, I need to get this done. I'm going to go grab the big heavy 10-pounder and really get it done. What you end up finding is the guy who grabbed the 6-pounder gets more work done in the next hour than you did with the 10-pounder, just because you spent so much energy swinging an excessive amount of steel and not actually delivering a high average amount of force over a specific time period. I.e., work smarter rather than work harder. And I've seen that many times, particularly people who like to use large framing hammers. Some people are large structured people and work with the large, heavy 24-ounce framing hammers really well. And other people, it just uses up way too much energy. And they'll use a lighter 16 or 18-ounce framing hammer and effectively drive just about as many nails in the same amount of time. Anyway, I really appreciate everybody watching my little sledgehammer video, and everybody who has subscribed. And if you haven't subscribed, please do subscribe to my channel. Catus Maximus out.